To begin with, I've been listening carefully to all the presentations in this room. I don't know about the presentations in the other room. I get saddened a bit. Saddened because of two reasons. Mr. Mkrtichyan started first, and he started with his speech against ideology. He said we're in the ideologized knowledge framework, so we cannot correctly explain what was going on in Armenia. And I have to note with pain that in almost all the speeches I'm observing not just ideology. Being ideologized is fine, and it's normal. Mr. Mkrtichyan would agree. He knows Max Scheller's German texts, and he knows that any knowledge is ideology. He knows also Gödel theorem. He probably meant not the ideology, he probably meant the mythologization. Myths are a very dangerous thing. As Robert Elias, the classic of sociology, said, the main problem of sociology is the myth hunt. So the main myth that underlies almost all the speeches today, and everyone used it implicitly or explicitly, is the journey. Everyone speaks about this journey, the path, not having an objective, not knowing where they're going, what they're building. Everyone heard about the road, the journey. We like it or not, if we speak about a journey, we go back to a very early false belief that was overcome in Armenia 15 years ago. But unfortunately, we keep going back to it. It's the notion of a transition society, that we're transitioning, traveling through some path from point A to some point B, and that all the related myths that served misleading society rather than portraying the reality. We're not going anywhere. We are in a certain quality, and it's in that quality we need to explain everything that happens in Armenia. Secondly, why am I saddened? We may seem to speak the same language, but we really don't understand each other because we don't speak the same language. We use notions violating rule number one of logic, the rule of identity. We prescribe meaning in notions and we attribute it to others, to our colleagues, and we start criticizing people for those meanings that really don't exist in these notions. What are we really talking about? Let's understand it when we use some words. Have we delivered them as terms, or people just randomly formulate whatever they want? I see it's not straightforward, and I think one of the objectives of this forum should be to ensure that consistent language rules are developed when we speak of Armenian reality. What language we use? Should this language be, at least for the Armenia sociologists, consistent and understandable, or not? Do we continue misunderstanding each other? We don't understand each other and we don't read one another. So many of the questions that seem to have been long overcome re-emerge these days. They try to reject them and disprove them. They've long ago been disproven and denied. I blame myself too. Don't think I'm only blaming the others. I was not aware of Mr. Zolian's brilliant article that he just sent to me recently. After I read it, I understood that what I'm presenting here was best supplemented by Mr. Zolian's paper. So now, why no war, no peace societies concept? Well, you know that this is not any new language. It's not my term. It's been in circulation for at least about 15 years. And research has shown that now this type of society, which we see in Armenia, is something of a model that exists also outside of Armenia. One may think if it had existed, it would have been studied a long time ago, but it wasn't. It wasn't studied, and it wasn't really studied by our foreign colleagues. And you can see Israel is a typical example of this kind of society. Why are we this type of society? There are some internal and external circumstances. What circumstances make our society the type that it is? Society and state are now interconnected. State is the political organization of society. The reality in which we are certainly influences social life. We say Armenian society, I mean societies in the Republic of Armenia and the Republic of Artsakh, although I understand that there are some differences and peculiarities. Sir Mabel Sargsyan mentioned this. Something that is an ideological attitude in Yerevan is for the people of Artsakh real life, and the tangible problem of security. We received an institutional heritage from the Soviet Union. We are a post-Soviet state, so we're also a post-Soviet society. Secondly, whatever happens in Armenia isn't in isolation from the world. It all happens in the global context. And we cannot ignore this context. And we should not forget the peculiar impact of this context. In 2020, from our state budget, we have to pay $800 million for our external public debt. And thirdly, we are in a region, that is the South Caucasus region, and the regional process has an impact we cannot disregard. So this whole impact creates a situation that is the situation of no war, no peace society. Firstly, the frozen war. Allow me not to read this because your eyes will read it faster than my voice. You can see what I mean and what this frozen war really means. To move on. High level of militarization. I have with me Bonds Conversion Center research. Very reputed, highly regarded index around the world. You see, Armenia is the third in the world by the level of militarization. Azerbaijan is number 11. It's still a highly militarized society. So we, in the South Caucasus region, are facing a high degree of militarization. In our society, there's reference there was earlier reference to horizontal and vertical relations. In societies of our type, the horizontal structure is diluting in the vertical structure. Let me not read it. It creates not pure authoritarianism, it creates structural authoritarianism. With the authority changing, the authoritarianism problem doesn't get solved. We are and remain a society with an authoritarian structure. In his speech, Mr. Voskanyan asked what Armenian society's social structure is. It hasn't been studied. It has been studied, and we do know it. It's a structure that is characterized by uncertainty. Today, it's impossible to clearly delineate between the estates, which our Russian colleague did, or the classes that they used to refer to in the past. Anything we delineate would be constructivism. We would be constructing these social layers, because the crystallization has really not ended yet. And the social layers in Armenia have still not crystallized in terms of their scope and boundaries. We can say this is the so-called elite, and this is pretty clear, but in all other layers there's uncertainty. As you said, if somebody's homeless, they may be getting a lot of money from abroad, and that will change their status in society. Yes, a homeless person can change their status in our society. In a society of this type, mobilization is a defining feature. If we're in no war, no peace, we should always be able to mobilize. This society, which is always facing a permanent threat, should develop some sort of mechanisms so that whenever necessary can mobilize all resources. For that reason, we have not participatory democracy like the West, Western Europe, but mobilizational democracy. Not my term, I didn't invent it. Back in the day, in the 50s, young Samuel Huntington, when he was studying Eastern societies, India, Lebanon, he proposed this term, saying that societies of Eastern type aren't typically participatory in their democracy. They are more of the mobilizational democracy type. And a politician who manages to mobilize the masses, doesn't matter how, there can be different ways, including vote buying and charisma, that politician will actively engage in politics. So that quality in social life is demonstrated in all fields of public life, from mass media to the rearing of children. But for me to demonstrate this is not pure theory, but it's based on empirical facts. Please read. Our mind is our weapon. Yerevan School 186, 7th grade, 2011. So our children are raised in this way, which is very consistent with the overall logic of a society at no war, no peace. Of course, there's also the opposition to this. There's also the marginal discourse. My knowledge is not weapon. This is graffiti on a wall. Some part of society tries to change, to rebel against the situation. That society is very dynamic, very chaotic, and still needs eventual crystallization. But irrespective of it, we're now in this situation, and this situation has its logic. Here's what it dictates. Which one do you think is the character of the Armenian leader? Same person, but different leaders. The line in the middle. To win, you need to have this transformation. Military uniform, a symbolic expression thereof. Thank you.